trauma affects dating life so deeply, and a lot of times we don't realize it impacts who we're attracted to because our brain will always favor what is familiar over what's good for us. Even if we know that this person is a healthy person to be in a relationship with, a lot of times I notice people will be attracted to something that people who exhibit toxic traits, right? People who are not nice to them, who ignore them, who might be physically or emotionally abusive. And so a lot of times the reason why we're attracted to those types of people is because growing up, you lived in a familiar environment where you are used to chaos. You are used to being ignored or not seen or feeling small. And our brain is a brilliant part of us, and its purpose is to keep us safe. And what is safe is what is familiar to the brain.
Welcome to the Asian Dating Podcast. I'm your host, May Bugenhagen. I am the founder of Two Asian Matchmakers, a boutique matchmaking company that started out of Los Angeles. And now I help men all across the US who want to meet Asian women. And I bring on a guest every week so we can talk about dating and just kind of dig in and talk informally about dating topics. And this week I have Anna. Anna is a certified self-worth and inner fulfillment coach with an academic background in biopsychology, cognition, and neuroscience from the University of Michigan. She helps ambitious go-getters heal self-sabotage at the root and discover their authentic inner confidence. Through this, they are able to attract healthy relationships that are deeply fulfilling, create lasting consistency in working towards their dreams and goals, and cultivate the courage to hold boundaries that protect their mental peace. Her life's mission is to help create a world where people reconnect with their inherent sense of worthiness, allowing them to thrive mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Anna Sue, is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yes, it's like shoe, but Sue
Okay.
works.
Okay. Anna Shu, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for joining us. And will you tell the audience how you got started as a coach to help people not self sabotage their relationships and all that good stuff?
Yes. Yeah. So growing up, I always had this sense of never feeling good enough. And I know this was a really big, I guess, theme, and especially growing up as an Asian American, right? It's like with the parents of immigrants, their mindset was instilled by the generation before them. It was always like, do more, be more. It's never enough, right? And whenever that narrative we hear over and over, that becomes our inner critic. It becomes that voice in our mind that whenever we say we achieve something, we still have that lingering feeling of never feeling good enough. And so for me, I lived with this for almost until I think around college time. And so, and all my peers, most of them were Asian Americans as well. So they were going through the same thing. And I was like, maybe this is just how life is, maybe we'll always have to do more. Once I get the next goal, then I'll finally feel fulfilled, right? And the next goal will come, and then you still don't feel fulfilled. You still feel like, oh no, like I just still don't feel good enough. Maybe I need to set a bigger goal, right? And then so this cycle continues until one day I was like, you know what? There has to be something more than this. Like there has to be a way for people to feel happy and truly happy, right? What happened to that innocent happiness that we felt when we were a child? And so I started reading, I started doing research, I started kind of looking into what is a fulfilled life? How can I live that? And during my research, I became happier. I started kind of reconnecting to my own inner sense of self-worth and realizing that that inner sense of self-worth is always there. It's just that we've been taught over time that we don't have it anymore, that you have to do something in order to achieve some sort of self-worth. But we don't realize that that self-worth is still inside of us. We just have things that are blocking it. And so for me, I started looking into a coach, and I trained under Alyssa Nobrega. She was a psychotherapist turned coach. She saw the gap between coaching and therapy. And so that's where I operate as well. Really kind of helping people kind of stop self-sabotaging the way they use the advice or like the way they use the tools that they learn from books. Because a lot of times people will, learn something from a book and they'll try to apply it, but then they'll self-sabotage, right? So then a lot of times I was like, oh, there must be a solution. And so with my coach, she's the one who kind of taught us like how to overcome that self-sabotage pattern. So that's a long story of how I got into coaching.
So when you were growing up, did that come from your parents? Did that your parents always wanted you to have a different goal? So it made you feel like, okay, I need to continue getting another goal and getting something else accomplished? Or did they say, gosh, Anna, you need to do this. That's not good enough. Like who's
Yeah.
inflicting these inner voices in you?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. I feel like growing up, there was that voice that they kept telling me, "Oh, like, you got an A, okay, it should be an A plus," or, "You got a B, oh, no, that's horrible," you know? And so, really, when that is the narrative that you kinda kept listening to when you're little, that naturally becomes your own inner voice as well. It becomes that kinda, I guess you could say, the audio loop that keeps on repeating over and over. And so even though my parents, I think around high school, they kind of gradually stopped telling me to do more and everything, that narrative was already looping in my mind. So I would be comparing myself to peers. I would be achieving something, but then still inside not feeling good enough. And so really noticing, oh, like I keep on comparing, I keep on being in this space of, okay, like, yeah, I did better, but that's still not good enough. And so really seeing how also now that I'm able to see, okay, I got this from my parents, but knowing that my parents also got it from their parents and it's a generational belief that's passed down. So really seeing it for what it is, which is generational, we call it generational trauma. So
But doesn't that make us Asian Americans succeed more and do better and get good grades and get a
yes.
good job and apply to good schools, like, because of that voice that's always
Yeah.
pushing us? So,
Yeah.
is it all a bad thing?
I always like to say there are gifts within our trauma. There's always a gift, right? Every single trauma response that we've ever experienced was meant to protect us at some way. When you were little and you got a B on your paper and your parent was like, you didn't do good enough, to the little kid, it's not so much that they want to achieve more, it's that they want their parents' love. And so when we achieve more and do more, yes, it's great. But then we always have this sense of never feeling loved, never feeling good enough. We feel like that we have to do more in order to be loved, that we are not inherently lovable. And so that is where the problem stems from. Yes, it does make us achieve more and do amazing things, which is beautiful, right? It's amazing. And now it's finding a way to balance that with also feeling good enough. We can have both at the same time.
So that's what you kind of coach your people is you can have both. It can make you happy. It's possible.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I notice a lot of people who I coach a lot of high achievers, and it's interesting because most of my clients are like a younger version of me. And so I coach a lot of high achievers who do really good at their job. They're exceptional. But no matter how good they do, they always feel like something's wrong with them, that they have to be perfect or else they get a lot of anxiety. They go to sleep with anxiety, they wake up with anxiety. They always are questioning whether they're doing enough. Right. And so really helping them see like, oh, this is just a pattern that you learned growing up in order for you to feel like you were loved and accepted by your parents. And then really seeing that pattern for what it is and thinking that pattern and then practicing doing these techniques to let it go and reprogram those beliefs. So that's what really I do is just helping people not burn out almost because a lot of times when we keep on pushing for and pushing for, we always end up burning out emotionally, physically. Because when we burn out emotionally, we will burn out physically. Our emotions will impact our health and well being. And so, really, when we're able to create a sustainable way of living, that's what will create change. I had the insight the other day where what came to me was shame is not sustainable, right? It's a lot of times we're always shaming ourselves to do more, to be more. But then this always creates this burnout. This creates this roller coaster feeling of I was doing a lot and then you burn out and then you're doing a lot and you burn out and it just gets really tiring. And this is why a lot of people are struggling with mental health today.
Yeah, yeah. I could totally see how childhood trauma can impact our day-to-day lives and especially our dating lives. Now, what are some tools that you can have people implement right away that might help them overcome some of
Yeah.
the trauma in their dating lives?
Yeah, so trauma affects dating life so deeply, and a lot of times we don't realize it impacts who we're attracted to because our brain will always favor what is familiar over what's good for us, right? Even if we know that this person is a healthy person to be in a relationship with, a lot of times I notice people will be attracted to something that people who exhibit toxic traits, right? People who are not nice to them, who ignore them, who might be physically or emotionally abusive, right? And so a lot of times the reason why we're attracted to those types of people is because growing up, you lived in a familiar environment where you were used to chaos. You were used to being ignored or not seen or feeling small. And our brain is a brilliant part of us. And its purpose is to keep us safe. And what is safe is what is familiar to the brain. Even though if we look at it, if it's a abusive relationship, that's not safe, right? But if it is what you grew up with, then that is what we will go towards. And so one big, I guess, tool I like to share is really asking yourself, okay, like kind of doing reflection. What kind of household did I grow up in? What is my definition of love? What did I learn about love from my parents, from my peers? And really reflecting what are the answers that come up naturally and just seeing how those answers mirror your current perhaps relationship or perhaps the people you're attracted to. And then I like to flip it to the opposite. This is more mindset work, but kind of flipping to the opposite of how is a non-chaotic relationship actually safer? We actually don't really reflect on it and bring awareness to it. We're usually just so deep inside of the pattern, inside of the chaos that we don't really pop out of it and just really reflect, okay, like how is it actually safer to be with this person? How is it actually more exciting to be with someone who is more stable? Right? We don't really take time to reflect and bring awareness to it. We're just so in it, right? So
That's interesting. You said that our brain automatically goes towards something that we're familiar with. It kind of explains chemistry.
yeah,
People find that, you know how the term or the saying is, oh, you're going to marry your mother or marry your
yeah,
father, someone you're
yeah,
familiar with. Like, I
yes,
find that women a lot of times want men that are similar to their fathers because they find that's chemistry. Like, oh, he's strong and he's aggressive or he's
yeah,
takes initiative, like that's what they find attractive because they see
yeah,
that their uncle does that or their dad does
yes,
that or their brothers
yeah,
do that, so
yeah,
that's what they find attractive is what is familiar to them, right? So it kind
yeah,
of goes the same way with chemistry, like
yes.
what do men find attractive? Well, is that the same way it works for men too,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
whatever's
So it's
familiar?
very fascinating. I love that you brought this up because chemistry is literally the brain being like, "Ooh, like I know this. Like I know how to play into this puzzle piece." Right? It's like if you, for instance, for a woman who grew up in maybe they saw their father being aggressive and like assertive and all of that. And when the father treated the daughter like, "Oh, you need to be this way in order to feel loved." That there's always the part of this younger girl that wants love, and it wants love from this specific type of person because it feels like once I get this type of love, then I'll feel whole and complete. And so it's the same thing for men. And also it's not necessarily from the father for the daughter, right? It's like whoever embodied the more masculine energy in the relationship, that could be the mom, that could be the aunts, that could be it doesn't have to be a female or a male. Like for instance, for me, growing up in my family, all the women in my family are very powerful and very like a more masculine energy. And so for me, I realized for my own journey that I was seeking love from a figure that resembled my mom. And so it was very interesting to see like how we all are looking for love from outside of us when the solution really is to get it from inside of us. And so for men who are seeking relationships, really reflecting, oh, like what kind of woman am I looking for? And like, but what kind of woman am I looking for? And then what am I actually attracted to? I think seeing the discrepancies can be really interesting because a lot of times we'll see that what we're attracted to is a mirror of who we didn't get love from when we were growing up.
Is that always the case? We're looking for somebody who we didn't get love from growing up? Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you
Yeah.
expand on that a little bit?
Yes. Yeah. So when we're growing up, we are very happy, right? When we're little kids, everything's great. And then something happens where we for the first time have a belief that, oh, I'm not lovable. That's like the first negative belief that we have. And that's kind of what creates the first layer on top of seeing our self-worth. So I like to use the example of maybe when this little kid was growing up, whenever mom came home, they would hug the kid and be like, "Oh, I love you." But then maybe one day the mom came home, she got laid off from her job, and then instead of coming home and hugging the kid, and maybe the kid was like talking a lot and like jumping around, and then the mom just couldn't take it, right? She's like, "Stop it! You know, you're so annoying. You're so loud. I hate when you talk." Right? Nothing on the mom, right, or on the kid. It's just life happens, right? And so, but then to the kid, in the kid's mind, that kid might think, "Oh, I have to be quiet in order to be loved. I can't speak up and or else I'm not lovable or else I won't be accepted." That's the first belief they create in their life. Whatever that is, right? You have to look for yourself to figure out what that is. But everyone has something different and figuring out that first one will really help you see, wow, like that still plays out in my life today. So it's very
Yeah.
fascinating how we kind of carry that with us and we still try to achieve love from other people who mirror that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like our partner, it could be a friend, it could be a boss. It's find feeling like you're not enough in that way. And that carries out throughout your life.
So, in what ways does low self worth cause us to self sabotage our relationships? Like, what do you
Yeah.
see? What examples can you share with us?
Yeah, it's very interesting. When you have low self worth, right? I always like to say when you have low self worth, you aren't able to perceive disrespect as well. So this is why having self love is so important because when you are able to increase your self love and genuine self love, like appreciating yourself, realizing you are worthy, your tolerance for disrespect decreases. You'll see more clearly, oh, like this is not something I'm going to tolerate anymore, right? So if you have low self-worth and someone treats you well, the brain, because it's not familiar with that, might be like, "Oh, this relationship is now boring. I don't like this anymore." Right? So then it'll be like, "Okay, I'm gonna go to the next relationship." Or it will see, I mean, maybe you really want to connect with your partner, but growing up, you were taught to not share your emotions. So then instead of really feeling like, "Oh, I want to connect," you're going to self-sabotage because you don't feel worthy to share your emotions because if you share your emotions, people will see you as weak. Right, and so that's a big one I see among the men that I coach. Yeah,
Yeah, this is also very interesting. And I think people don't realize it until they get a coach and start drilling down on some of
yeah,
these instances that happened in their lives or how
yeah,
they're acting things out now in their current
yeah,
dating
yeah,
relationship. So it's so interesting to me. So, what if you do have low self worth, but you want to appear that you're confident
yeah.
in the dating world? Is that even possible?
Yeah, so I always like to say, confidence doesn't happen overnight, but it's more like I like to say everyone already has confidence within them. It's more like they have to let go of the fear of being confident. Because you already know if you were by yourself and no one's in the room and asks you to just be fully yourself, you kind of maybe have a little bit of resistance, but well, for the most part, you'd be able to be like fully yourself. But when you're with other people, we have this fear that blocks us from expressing that inner confidence that we already have. And so I like to say the first step is really asking yourself, how can I like what does that confident version of me look like? A lot of times if we have low self-worth, we don't even know anymore, right? We don't know who that version is. So really seeing what does the best version of you look like? Maybe a year or two from now, if everything worked out, like what does that version of you look like? What do they feel like? What is their energy like? What are they wearing? How do they carry themselves? What's a day in their life look like? Really kind of painting this picture of who that person is, and then practicing ways to embody that energy every single day. You don't have to be that person immediately, but kind of if that person is very feels very grounded, what are some ways you can feel grounded now? If that person is more assertive, what ways can you kind of share this assertiveness that in like little bits, right? It's like, oh, you don't have to on like just shout on the top of a rooftop and be like, I'm amazing, like I'm gonna speak my voice like that. Sometimes that's really hard and that's okay, right? So it's like, okay, like how can I gradually kind of build this assertiveness every day? What can I challenge myself that feels safe but also feels kind of an edge? So I like to say, like, really paint that picture and then really practice embodying that.
So what is something you could do like 1%, 5% every day
Yeah.
to get to that confident 100%
Yeah.
level?
Yeah. So I actually I'm creating a meditation and I have like a little freebie where I do like have this guide where you can kind of design your future and your future life or version of yourself. So if you would like that, I guess I'll have that in the link below. But really is practicing seeing what that version of you looks like kind of sitting, visualizing for a moment. What does that person feel like? That on top of the world, amazing version of me. What does that feel like? And then feeling that every day in the morning. I like to encourage my clients to feel that energy in the morning, kind of like a jump start. And because when you change your energy, you change how you are perceived in the world, you change how you act in the world. You might have heard the quote, your beliefs create your reality, right? I like to break it down. It's like if your belief is that you're not good enough, it's going to influence all your thoughts. All you're thinking about all day is, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And then those thoughts influence your actions and how you be. So you might walk slouched, you might be smaller, you might, not speak up. And then the world will like respond to your actions, right? And kind of reaffirm that belief that you had versus, okay, if I activate this energy in the morning of this confident version of me, just by visualizing, seeing what that version looks like, really feeling in my body, what does that feel like to be confident? What would life be like if I couldn't feel not worthy for just about 1 minute? What would that feel like? What would that confidence feel like? Feeling that in your body, that influences your thoughts, it influences your actions, and people will respond differently, and it will start building that new belief. A belief is just a thought that's been repeated over and over. So really when we're able to create more thoughts that are in alignment with the new belief we want, we're able to create a new way of being.
Man, it just makes you think that you really have to be good parents to raise confident, good kids, right? Like if your parents aren't supportive and help you be the best version of yourself, then you're going to have these challenges your whole life unless you seek a coach and a therapist and or a therapist to really try to change some of these beliefs and thoughts in your mindset, right? Like it's so important.
It's so important, and also, I think a lot of parents beat themselves up over, not being a good enough parent, but really what I noticed what kids need is just a present parent. That's because even if I remember the book, I forget it was by Eckhart Tolle, I think it was A New Earth, and they were talking about how even if Jesus or Buddha or, like, Mahatma Gandhi, if they all had if I don't know if Mahatma Gandhi had kids, but if all these seemingly perfect people, if their perfect principles had kids, their kids would still go through what they need to go through in life. They would still deal with self-doubt because that's just a natural part of life. But with parents who are more aware of this, they can be that supportive and safe space for the kids to deal with it and to work through it and give them tools and allow them to have their processes. Because a lot of times I've noticed in the self-development community, this is a big trap that I see, is that people think, oh, I'm going to do therapy, I'm going to do coaching in order to become perfect. But that's not the case. That just perpetuates the shame and the perfectionism. It's more like, oh, I'm doing this so I can really expand how well I can hold myself in safety and in acceptance when I am having those low moments. Because low moments are is part of life. It's part of the human experience, and that's okay. And being okay with those moments is what allows us to get through them even faster.
I mean, it's so true when people say that you have to have self-love before you can love someone else, right?
Mhm.
Like, you really are a better person if you are happy with yourself.
Yes.
So that really says a lot. So I know a lot of people talk about manifesting a great life, a dream
Yeah.
partner, a
Yeah.
potential romantic partner. Like, how does one actually find or manifest their dream partner? Do you know? Like, what are
Yeah.
some tips
Yeah.
you can give us?
Yeah, it's funny. I've actually helped a lot of my friends. Like this is before I was a coach too. Is like help my friends manifest their current partners. Like one of my current partners, she just had a baby. I not partner, one of my current friends, she just had a baby, and I remember when she moved here, she was like, "I just want a corporate man in a country man in the corporate world," and it was just so funny. She wanted like a cowboy who worked in the corporate life, and that's so funny. I was like, I guided her through this process, which I'll share. Is really visualizing what does it feel like to be with this partner, right? What do they make you feel? What do they you don't if you don't know what you want them to look like, that's okay, but if you do, great. But most importantly is how do you want this person to make you feel? How do you feel when you're with them? Do you feel safe? Do you feel free? Do you feel very excited, very loved, right? Really activating those feelings within you and then also becoming the person that this ideal partner is looking for. You know, it's like wondering, what does this ideal partner like want in a partner, right? It's like, okay, like how can I embody that? How can I grow myself into that version? And then also seeing clearly like what that person is like and what they make you feel is also important, like I said before. And just really embodying those qualities of what it feels like to be loved already. If you're already loved, if you're already in that relationship, what would that feel like? And how can you bring those emotions into everyday life? That has been super powerful. Like, for instance, my friend, like she now has a baby and she met this guy, and it was literally so perfect because it's very interesting. Like going back to the self-worth conversation, she had quite a tough time with relationships, I would say, and, like, she met, like, kinda not so great partners along the way. But once she started really focusing on her faith, her self-worth, her and her and her belief in herself, she was able to meet a partner that matched her frequency. And so I think that's where it's so powerful to be doing our own work on ourselves, right? To grow our self-worth, to be able to see that we are worthy of this partner. Because say you have low self-worth and suddenly this amazing partner comes out of nowhere, this if you have low self-worth, you probably will say something like, "Oh, I don't deserve this," or "I'm not deserving of this partner," or like, This it must be too good to be true," you know? So, if you grow your self-worth though, and, like, grow your awareness of how worthy you are, you will be able to see, "Oh, like, this is like, oh, I manifested the partner. Like, I did it," you know? Or like, "Ah, this is the one." So, just noticing how self-worth influences your perspective of what is happening.
That's just like when people say that they're not they're not online dating material, or
Yeah,
they're not going to be a good girlfriend or boyfriend. It's like
yeah,
they're just saying those things and they're going to believe it, and then they're not
yeah,
going to act on
yeah,
the perfect person in front of them, right? Of course, there is
yeah,
no perfect person,
yeah, yeah.
but there's a perfect person for him or her. So
Yes,
they
yes,
really need to kind of change the way they're thinking.
yeah,
I like when you said, when people work on themselves, like if they're Christian, they go to church. If they
Yeah,
like certain activities, they should go and seek those activities in
yeah,
case they find somebody that
yeah,
they can have things in common with. I find that a
yeah,
lot of times working with singles is sometimes people get lazy. They think that someone's just going to knock on their door and
yeah,
they're be the perfect person, but it's like,
yeah,
no, you actually have to go out and find this person. Like Anna, if you were single, I would be like, okay, you like pickleball, you should go play pickleball, or
yeah,
you should
yeah,
sign up for pickleball tournaments, or
yeah,
you like antique shopping, you should
yeah,
go and hang out at swap meets or
yes,
flea
I love it.
markets or whatever
Yeah,
that may be. Like you need
mhm,
to enjoy doing the stuff that you like to do. And then it's a
yes,
bonus if you meet somebody who happens to like
yes,
those things too, right? Like I feel like if you're single, you have to work on yourself and you have to work on trying to find this person, not just
yes.
be lazy about it. What are your thoughts on
Exactly.
that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, I feel like it's like when you're doing all these things that you love, you kind of let go of the need for a relationship in those months because you're so present. You're so in enjoying life, and your thoughts aren't so I need a relationship. Oh my God, I'm gonna be single forever. Like so it's really like you're fully present, you're enjoying the moment, and that makes you also radiant, right? You also glow when you're doing things that you love, and that makes you attractive. So one of my favorite quotes is I found you when I went looking for me. And
I
I feel
love
like that's
that.
such a yeah, such a powerful quote, especially for people who are trying to find a relationship right now. I always say, like, stop looking for a relationship. Look for yourself. Like, who is that you want to become? Because when you are able to focus on yourself, naturally you become like a magnet for people to come into your life versus always trying to chase and like repelling people away, like not on purpose, but it's like the energy underneath when you're so sure of yourself and you're doing things you love, that's naturally magnetic and attractive. So I love
Yeah,
what you said.
yeah. Well, before I let you go, what can one do to begin attracting healthy partnerships? What are some things that someone can do who's listening that maybe feel like, you know what, I am ready to find someone amazing. I have found myself,
Yeah.
but what can they do to find
Yeah.
a healthy relationship?
Yeah, so I would say really practice dating yourself and treating yourself the way you would like your partner to treat you. Because a lot of times we're so focused on, yes, doing things we love is great. And also, it's like, how am I talking to myself when I fall down? Or like, how am I being with myself or being with others when I'm feeling down? Really kind of seeing, like, how would I want my partner to treat me? How can I give that to myself first? Because when we're able to give it to ourselves first, we're able to create this kind of powerful independence that you don't lose yourself in a relationship in the future. And so this also allows you to see like, oh, and see and vet the people who come into your life instead of being like, oh, this person came into life. Oh my God, like maybe this is the one for me. Versus kind of when you're able to have this sense of, oh, I know how I want to be treated. Is this person going to meet that standard? And then vetting it that way. That way you'll know like, oh yeah, like I know what I deserve and I know what will be healthy for me.
When you say don't lose yourself in a relationship, what about the women who kind of ditches her friends when she meets a new man? Like,
Yes.
what is your message to the women out there who kind of bails on her girlfriends when she has a man
Yeah.
in her life?
Yeah. I mean, there's always that saying, the chicks before the D, you know what I mean? But but not to bring that in, it's really kind of knowing that you don't want to abandon yourself, right? If you abandon yourself, that is where you begin to lose sight of who you are, what you love, what brings you joy. I notice a lot of women will sacrifice their own joy for a person that they love, right? It's like, oh, like I like to do this, but because my partner likes to do this, I'm gonna do that instead. It's like really when we do that, we kind of erode our self-trust more and more. We erode our sense of self. And I notice a lot of women at a certain point in their relationship, they'll suddenly feel unhappy in their relationship. And they'll be like, why do I feel so unhappy with this relationship suddenly? It's because they've stopped loving themselves in the way that they used to love themselves. They used to like, because I know there's a lot of narrative in the woman dating community is like, oh, like boys ruin everything. But it's because like, oh, like it's because you're abandoning yourself in the process of loving another person. And when we do that, it really erodes away at the relationship at ourselves. So making time for yourself and honoring yourself and finding your way back to what you love to do is so, so important.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in that scenario, women should continue going to lunch or brunch with her girlfriends. Like, you kind of need
Yeah.
that time away
Mhm.
from your man. I don't
Yeah.
think a healthy relationship is to make your husband or your partner everything. Like,
Yeah.
he's your best friend. You go run errands together. You go buy
Yeah.
shoes together. You
Yeah.
go buy a bed together.
Yeah.
You go running, you play poker together, like, he is your everything, and then
Yeah.
when your relationship gets boring or when he
Yeah.
leaves you or you leave
Yeah.
him, you need to find yourself again. Like, you need to continue doing the things that you love that made
Yeah.
you who you were when he fell in
Yes.
love with you, right? Like, you don't
Yeah.
expect
Yeah.
your partner to abandon all of his hobbies
Exactly.
or interests because
Yeah.
he's with you, right? Like, why would
Yeah.
you abandon all of your
Yeah.
interests because you're with a new guy? So
Right.
I
Right.
don't understand when women do that. And I guess maybe is it like insecurity? Like they feel like, oh, he's gonna leave me if I don't do all of his interests, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's an aspect of a lot of women, they naturally are in like the serving role where it's like they want to support the partner. They are willing to sacrifice. I think a lot of women naturally fall into that kind of energy. And so it could stem also from childhood, right? Maybe they saw their mom doing that to the dad or the feminine energy, whether that's the dad or the mom, like doing that to the masculine energy, always like losing themselves. They like a lot of kids will see their parents, the dynamic and mirror it, right? So they'll seek someone where they will let go of everything they love in order to make the other person happy. And it becomes people pleasing, it becomes like not so like maybe outbursts of upsetness because they really pressure like put a lot of weight on themselves, and a lot of times they don't even recognize it, and then they really just explode. I notice a lot of women fall into this, and then but then they'll always fall back into that pattern again. And so really it stems from this feeling of wanting to be loved, wanting to be accepted, and feeling like, oh, like other people are more important than me, that I'm not important, right? This goes back to the self-worth. It's like, oh, like I know some people may know they're worthy, but then it's like really knowing like, oh, like my time is worthy in itself. It's not that my identity has become like this me and him, right? It's more like, oh, like my identity is mine, is me. And I also can be in support of my partner. A lot of people tangle up their identity up with the relationship. It becomes like us versus me, which is nice, but you can have both. So yeah.
So, you being a coach and helping single women through this, do you also help men and women or just women?
Yeah. It's funny, I help mostly men actually.
Oh,
It's funny when I find it funny because when I first started my coaching career, I thought I would be working with mostly women, but I ended up working with a lot of men. So it's very fascinating how things work out. I think a lot of men feel like they don't have a safe space to express and really be able to heal their sense of self-worth. And so with women, at least you have friends to chat about. Self-worth comes up in like in an everyday conversation versus for men, they don't really have that safe and nurturing space to really be able to be vulnerable. And so I think for me, I know that a lot of men have said that who are my clients have said that I create a very safe space for them to cry, for them to be themselves, to be vulnerable. So I think,
So,
yeah.
what would you suggest a woman who's in a relationship or future relationships, how would they communicate with the man to let him know that it's okay to cry or be vulnerable and to express his emotions? Like what would you advise the women to do?
Yeah, I think really it's creating a safe space where they don't expect the man to kind of put everything onto themselves. And because I remember there was I forget if it was a study or if it was a anecdote from another therapist. She was saying how the man tried to be vulnerable in the relationship, but then the woman kind of froze up because she didn't know what to do because she wasn't used to it, even though she wanted the husband to be more vulnerable. But it's almost like she felt like, oh, like something that it's almost like an unconscious belief that is perpetuated in society that men have to be strong, have to be a certain way. And so she felt this way and she was like, I don't know what to do. And so then this kind of makes like the man be like, oh, okay, I don't know what to do. I'm not going to show my emotion again. But then really it's like helping I think just seeing your partner as human versus like, oh, like it's a man or a husband, it's like a friend, right? It's like, oh, if it was just your friend, what would you say to them? Because a lot of times in relationships, we begin to see each other as like, oh, we see all these flaws with them, but we would often never treat like a guy friend same way we treat our husband or the vice versa, right? It's like, okay, like what if I just saw them as a human being, really sharing and being vulnerable with me? No labels, just human, and then just supporting them in that way.
So would you say, "Okay, babe, let's just have a safe space and just talk about something?" Like, what would make him
This
open up? Like,
yeah,
is there, like, a sentence I can
yeah,
say that would make him open up to
yeah,
me? Like, how would he
yeah,
know it's okay to express
yeah.
emotions?
So I noticed with men, it takes some time because it's like you saying one thing is going against all their collective societal trauma of not sharing vulnerability, right? So it might take a couple days, a couple months, I don't know, but it depends on the man. But really kind of creating that safe space, maybe like helping them kind of there's so many ways to go about it, but like it could be either structured or spontaneous. I would say like kind of bringing it up like, hey babe, like I want you to know I really value you sharing your emotions and I want you to know I'm here for you if you ever want to talk, and just kind of bringing it up. I don't want to say bring it up too often, but more like whenever it feels aligned. It feels like because I also notice a lot of people like overdoing it every day. They're like, "Is there anything you want to talk about?" Like, "Share with me your emotions," like but then it's like, oh, like, sometimes maybe some men just don't really have, like, that emotion in that moment, but really allowing them to just know, like, I'm a safe space for you to be whatever you want to be in that moment, and it's interesting because I know a lot of men deal with more, anger because that's the I guess you could say the masculine main it's like almost like men deal with anger more, women deal with sadness, and so sadness is seen as something that's more, acceptable in society and more okay, versus anger is not so much, and so a lot of times men will keep on suppressing it until they explode, which makes them seem even worse, right? But being a safe space for their anger, for their sadness, knowing that it has nothing don't make it personal, it's like, oh, knowing that this anger is their own anger and like unless it becomes like abusive, then that's a different story. But if it's just purely anger, not trying to fix it, just being there is like, oh, I hear you. Like, dang, that's really hard. I can't imagine what that would be like, and just really kind of being a safe presence for them to express. I think once they have that experience, then they start to open up more.
I'm just thinking like sometimes when I set people up and they go on dates and the
Yeah.
woman would be like, he didn't ask me any questions. I can't believe
Yeah.
he has no interest in what's going on. And he didn't
Yeah.
ask me one thing. I was just trying to carry on the conversation the whole time. And I go back to the woman and I'm like, well, actually, have you tried just telling him what you thought? Like, "Oh, yeah, I just saw
Yeah.
this great movie with, John Travolta and
Yeah.
so, and it was so amazing because the storyline was this, this, and this. What
Yeah.
do you think?" I feel like just
Yeah.
asking them, "What do you think?" at the end of the question or end of the statement would
Yeah.
get them to talk about their emotions. So I wonder if I wanted my man to be vulnerable and talk about his emotions, I can say, "Yeah, this is so sad, blah, 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 blah."
Yeah.
And then be like, "What
Yeah.
do you think?" And try to draw him out. I don't know. I mean, maybe that'll work, maybe it won't.
It's funny. I think a lot of women, we project our woman mind onto like how things should go, right? Because we're like, oh, I talk about it with our girlfriends all the time. So like the guys should think the same way, But then a lot of times what I noticed since I coach a lot of men, it's like it takes some time for them to even be aware of what emotions they're feeling. It's
Yeah.
almost like they process it through the mind first, so their mind will be like, "Oh, I'm okay with it." Like, "Yeah, it was sad," and then they'd be like, "That's it." But versus like they don't, and it stops there. Versus like they aren't really in touch with their emotions yet. And so, really, when they're able to be in touch with their emotions, then they'll talk more if it feels aligned. But really, kind of asking, I would say, like open-ended questions is good. I know there's like these type of questions called inquiry questions. For instance, it's like, "Oh, like, what do you feel like what's your, like, 10-year vision for us?" Right? And, like, kinda starting out on, like, a positive note and then helping them kinda at least begin connecting with their emotions more and more. And then by connecting to their emotions more and more, we also unlock the negative emotions, which is beautiful. We have negative emotions for a reason, and there's gifts within them, right? That's what makes us human. And so really allowing them to kind of explore because a lot of times women ask each other questions that men don't ask themselves. And so it's like, okay, like how can we combine it and allow them to explore, oh, a new way of thinking, imagination and visualization, all these things that society has told them that men can't or should not do as often.
Yeah, when you mentioned that women ask other women these questions, it's like, yeah, that's why you still need to hang out with your female friends even when you
So
have a man in your life, so you can
yeah,
still continue to grow and evolve and learn about
yeah,
yourself. So,
yeah,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
before I let you go, Anna, is there any last words of advice you can give the audience?
I feel like I always say the negative voice in your head is not the truth of who you are. It's just simply a voice recording that you've had since you're little. So, really exploring what is outside of that voice, right? If I didn't have this voice, what voice would be there? This is more of like a deep question to reflect on, but kind of seeing if I didn't have this negative voice, who would I be? And then tapping into that energy every day, embodying that energy of that confidence that is already inside of you. Maybe it starts out as something really small, but really feeling okay. Like if that confident version of me was feeling like very grounded and at peace every day and very fulfilled, very proud of myself. Can I activate those emotions right now in the morning? And how long during the day can I carry it into the day? It's like can I do it for 10 minutes? Can I feel this energy for an hour? Feeling your way to expanding this feeling throughout the day will allow you to change everything that's going on outside of you. Because our external reality is a mirror of our internal reality. So
Yeah.
really activating it within first.
Now, how would someone find you if they wanna work with you, and what is your ideal client?
Yeah, so I work with a lot of people who are very ambitious and they feel like they're always achieving, they're always doing a lot of amazing things, but they always feel like they're not good enough. And they feel like they really struggle with feeling like I finally have done enough in life. And so a lot of them also struggle with finding I guess healthy relationships and also whether that's in work or whether that is in love, or really feeling deserving of a relationship. I think that's a really big one. A relationship that they truly can thrive in. That maybe they have that low sense of self-worth, like, oh, maybe I just shouldn't go on a date, or maybe I shouldn't, go after this job opportunity, or I do want it, but I don't think I can do it. Right. Someone who really deals with all these negative thoughts and feels like they might have gone to therapy already and it feels like it's really slow, nothing's really happening, or like they've read a lot of books, but they feel like they can't apply it. They keep self-sabotaging. Self-sabotage is a big thing I work with on my clients. So if that is you, definitely message me. My email is anna@alignanduplevel.com, or you can find me on Instagram at alignanduplevel coaching.
And I will put all that information in the show notes. And Anna Shu, thank you so much for joining me today on the Asian Dating Podcast. And women, if you're out there, I'd love for you to register with me at 2asianmatchmakers.com. Fill out a profile with me so I know how to find you and set you up with a great guy who comes to me and wants to find a special partner. And thank you again, Anna, for all of your wisdom and all of your sense of humor and wit. I appreciate it. And I will see everybody later. Thank you. Bye, Anna.